Last time, we talked about agriculture and how it made cities possible. Well, today we're going to talk about society and cities and that kind of stuff. So, we talked about the fact that agriculture gets enough people living in one place so that you can start having specialization. People are producing enough food so you can have people doing new jobs. And they have cities, which are places of safety that people can flee to in times of danger, primarily when other people come to attack them, to take their land. The earliest form of government that you're going to find in these early walled cities is the temple. The temple, most of the time to some various false god or other, is going to have administrators inside who are going to apportion food from the entire society to take care of the poor and the helpless among the people living in that area. And eventually, government is going to shift over to an individual known as a lugal. In these battles, the person who is able to best defend them, or possibly best able to go over and punish other people for coming onto their land, is lauded by the people and is regarded as a leader. And these lugals are going to come to control society. And these lugals are going to turn into kings because they have the strongest household. What's a household? I'm glad you asked, because that's a really important thing to understand when we're talking about understanding the Bible. See, today in our modern world, the normal thing is for once you get married to run off and go start a new little nuclear family where it's just mom and dad and whatever kids they may have. And when the kids grow up, they go away. That's not how they did things in the ancient world. In the ancient world, they formed households. And this is how people survived, because you can't just go off and get a job. People didn't work for wages by and large back then. You went to produce your own food, and most of the time you just stayed with your family and continued to herd or hunt and gather or practice agriculture with the rest of your family. And these families would be headed by someone appropriately called the head, who would make the decisions for the family. And sometimes there would also be people that would not be genetically related to them. They could be referred to as servants or as slaves. Now, these slaves, the slavery you're thinking about, it's kind of like it and it's kind of not like it. Let's look at the example of Abraham. First of all, you know that Abraham, he's the one in the Bible stories who's that nice little old man with the nice little old lady next to him, and they've been promised a child, and they're 90 or 100 years old, and they're still waiting for God to give them a child. Well, the fact is that he has a ridiculously large herd, and who takes care of them? Well, it turns out over 300 servants take care of his herds. Over 300 male servants capable of going to battle. We'll talk about how I know that later. And if they didn't want to do what Abraham said, I think they could figure out a way to not have to do what he said. He's just a little 100-year-old man. And yet, they did exactly what he said. Also, they were not necessarily degraded. Joseph is a slave of Pharaoh. He's the second most powerful man in Egypt. Daniel is a slave of Nebuchadnezzar, also the second most powerful person. So they're not necessarily degraded at all. They're just someone in the household who's not genetically related. On the other hand, they can't just leave. If you leave, no one has to hunt you down. You're just going to starve to death, because the lone wolf dies in the ancient world. You're not going to roam around the place taking care of yourself. I mean, if you're hunting and gathering, you've got a group of people to help you. If you fall down on the job one day, someone else will catch some fish. How are you going to keep all of your sheep and protect yourself from robbers if there's only just you? No, the lone wolf dies. You need to stay with a household. And so people would enter households in a number of different ways, but by far the most common was either being taken in war as a prisoner and then enslaved and made into a household and finding your place there. Or secondly, people who are unsuccessful in supporting themselves or their own endeavors can sell themselves into slavery. This is going to be important in understanding some of the rules that God gives about slavery in the Old Testament. So there are remnants of the house system to this day. You might know about the House of Windsor, with the royal family of England. Well, that's how society was structured back then. And so the Lugal would be the head of the largest household with a lot of men. They were able to defend the city. And those Lugals are going to turn into what we later are going to refer to as kings. Now, government is at the city level. The city level. We don't have big territorial countries at first. Every city runs their own business. Now, cities can extend control over each other, and we will talk about that next time. However, these Lugals or kings have a number of important duties and privileges. And understanding these duties and privileges can help you understand word pictures and where they're coming from in the Bible. The king's job, or the Lugal, is to provide. If people are poor, he takes care of them and makes sure they're fed. If they're in danger, he makes sure they're protected. And if they require justice, he makes sure that justice is done. He judges wisely and makes sure that justice is done. But they also had a lot of privileges. They kind of got to do what they want. In the ancient Near East, it was not at all uncommon for kings to have many, many wives. And the same was true of Lugals. And they had a great deal of power. They lived in a great deal of luxury. They were always very wealthy. And they could tell everybody what to do because their word was law. And unfortunately, as time goes by, kings are going to spend a lot of time concentrating on their privileges and not so much working on their duties, which is why, as a general rule, we've chucked the whole thing. However, if we were to have a really, really good king, one that was really good at giving justice, and one that was great at providing, and one that we could always trust was not going to do us down just for his own power, wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? Because nothing could get in the way of him doing what was right. It's kind of the best kind of government if the king is good. Unfortunately, if the king is bad, it's the worst form of government. Next time, we're going to talk about how cities extend influence and control over each other. Well, I hope you were blessed and built up by my series on biblical history. If you like this sort of content, I would encourage you to bless me by liking and subscribing and hitting the notification button. If you like this sort of thing, I also have a book out called A Helpful Handbook of Hebrew History. It's available for WisePath Books at Amazon.com. Links in the description below.